Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer,
I'm Isa.
and this month we got a couple of very big topics to talk about. Primarily, the Marvel Cinematic Universe's first ever official Marvel Studios TV show.
hmm
If you're confused by that, Agents of Shield, the Netflix Defender series, Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, and all of that were technically canon to the MCU, but they were not produced by Kevin Feige's Marvel Studios.
Yeah.
They were produced by a sister company called Marvel Television, run by Jeff Loeb. Now, while they technically take place in the same universe, they never kind of feature the kind of connectivity to
Yeah.
the main storylines in the MCU movies. For example, yes, I know Agents of Shield touched upon it here and there, but they were more trying to, they were very loose connections. They were trying to do what they could to
Yeah.
connect themselves to the films. Whereas, with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki and all of that, these are main characters from the MCU that tie directly into movies. Some of them even setting up future films. Like
hmm
WandaVision, for example, might be setting up Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness,
Yep.
etc., etc. So that will be our main topic. But we'll also be talking about a little indie film called Saint Maud, one of the latest examples of A24's artful horror.
hmm
This one, the feature directorial debut of Rose Clark. Uh, Stellar. I think we both really loved it, and we're gonna
Yeah.
get into it soon. Small other topics later that we're going to be talking about. Studio Ghibli's first ever 3D animation, Earwig and the Witch. How did
Yeah.
that go? Discworld's first ever TV adaptation
hmm
called The Watch, coming out of BBC. We got Space Sweepers coming out of South Korea. Superman and Lois, see the CW versus latest DC TV show. How did that go? I watched the pilot. I'll let you know. Meanwhile, Isa also has bringing back his anime corner for a rather stacked edition. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that before we begin.
I think this particular season, right? So we're in the winter season at the moment.
Mm,
There have been a lot of like heavy hitters coming back with additional seasons. So we'll be talking a bit about like Attack on Titan's final season, which is it's got a lot of hype, a lot of stuff that we've covered before. ReZero had a new season.
mm-hmm.
Slime has a new season. Dr.Stone is back. Beastars season 2, and so on and so forth. I think we'll also be diving deeper into what is a fairly bold move by the guys at Cells at Work, where they're
Yes.
back with two sequels, one
Mm-hmm.
continuing the main storyline,
Mm-hmm.
so Cells at Work Season 2, and as well as Cells at Work Code Black, which is a slightly different take, tonally and just conceptually the same, but tonally different,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm enjoying quite a bit. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
talking about two animes that have taken really long hiatus. So much so that it precede the earlier seasons precede genre equality, so I've never actually recommended them, but they've recently come back.
Indeed.
Some strong, well, one stronger than ever. The other one, not as much. Because it requires a lot of like background knowledge for the two seasons prior.
Yes.
And then I'll be giving out some very strong recommendations for one or two new series and some fair recommendations for easy watching, kind of like guilty pleasure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all in all, like there's wow, how many is there's more than 10 kind of things that I'm going to be talking about later.
Nice, yeah. A stacked return to anime, specifically after COVID, halted a lot of productions.
Yeah.
So we are back with the winter season. It's going to be a lot to delve into. We'll get into that just a bit later. But let's kick it off with probably the biggest show of the year so far.
Mm.
I mean, it's coming out of Disney Plus. It is WandaVision. As I mentioned, not the first TV show to be set in MCU continuity, despite what Kevin Feige may tell you. Um, but it is the first to be produced by Marvel Studios under his direction.
Yep.
So, as I said, unlike Agents of Shield, Agent Carter, um, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Punisher, Runaways, over in the Hulu verse, those are produced by a separate Marvel TV division. And this is very, very different from the kind of more grounded take that Netflix has, or
hmm
the more comic booky take that Agents of Shield has. This particular show is the first installment of Phase 4,
Yep.
and the most different Marvel property that at least coming out of the MCU that's have ever happened. What a sheer oddity, utterly charming, sublimely daring effort that WandaVision is.
Yes.
The series isn't a superhero adventure so much as it is a wonderful love letter to a variety of vintage sitcoms throughout the decades,
Mm-hmm.
as well as later on, once the sitcom homages have passed, a really affecting deep dive into the cornucopia of trauma that WandaVision, or at least Wanda Maximoff, has experienced throughout her MCU stints, dating all the way back from Age of Ultron,
Yep.
all the way till now. These particular traumas have been glossed over in the films, particularly because there isn't much time in team up movies to really delve deep into what her character is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the show comes in, lah. But it does it in a very sly, different way. So the series, it finds Wanda Maximoff, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and Vision, played by Paul Bettany, living a domestic life in a suburban town of Westview, trying to hide their powers. And every episode goes forward in time, offering a pitch perfect homages to sitcoms from the 50s, and then the 60s, and then the 70s, and then the 80s, and then the 90s, and then the 2000s, and so on. Um, it's premiering an inventive, I guess, premiering with an inventive experiment like this
Yeah.
ran a huge risk of alienating MCU fans who want just MCU things.
Yeah.
With other shows down the pipeline, let's say Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki, it is not hard to imagine what they will look and feel like, because we have seen nearly 2 dozen movies shepherded by Feige,
Mm-hmm.
and we have kind of grown used to the rhythms and tones, and roughly the level of execution in each of them. Yes, there are differentiating features in the MCU films,
Yeah.
but for the most part, they do follow a kind of formula that we've gotten used to. But instead of kicking things off with an action-packed hero adventure that, say, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right, would have been an easier transition for Marvel fans,
Yeah.
WandaVision gets to demonstrate how elastic the MCU can be,
Mm-hmm.
especially after Endgame may have taken the original MCU formula as far as it can logically go,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
demonstrating that these characters are more versatile than they appeared to be is a very clever idea.
Yeah.
And when that versatility is wrapped in a meta love letter to its new medium, and to shows that I dearly adore. I would say I adore more than superhero stuff. I mean, all the better. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's a big risk, and I, for one, embrace the boldness of it and the brilliant execution of it. What do you think about this daring approach to present, at least to throw, I don't want to say like all comic book fans or all superhero movie fans are a little, uh I live in their little bubble,
Yeah.
but I would say that they are perhaps not super into stuff like indie films or classic sitcoms or prestige dramas and things like that. What do you think about their approach here? And do you think it alienated a core fan base?
Oh, okay, okay. There's a fair bit to chew on for that. When they first announced WandaVision, right?
Mhm.
Immediately what came to my mind is like, oh, are they gonna try and do something like they did with is it Tom King's run, The Visions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom King's run of The Visions, which I absolutely enjoyed, right? So for
Mm.
those of you that haven't read that, basically Vision creates his own family, his
Mhm.
entire synthezoid family, with his wife Virginia, son Vin, and Viv, who eventually becomes a member of the Young Avengers. And then just like how that plays out as them trying to be a normal family in kind of like the suburbs, right? So
Yep.
that immediately came to mind. I think what we got in the end for WandaVision was still surprising, right? Despite the fact that there's something to kind of draw on from the Visions and what they did there, right?
It's a bit of House of M also.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. Like, so
Yeah.
that they are. It's not something that hasn't been done, but it's definitely a very interesting take on the way that they went about doing it. Right.
Mhm.
We discover for the first time that Wanda is extremely fond of sitcoms because of her childhood.
Mhm.
Which is something that I've never, kind of come across. I don't think any of the movies dealt with that. I don't
Mhm.
think any of the comics ever dealt with that. And I thought that was a very like interesting way of going about it. I
Yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's extremely ambitious. I think that for the first time in a while, the MCU isn't taking itself too seriously. Uh,
And being experimental with his formatting too, which
yeah,
is unusual for
yeah,
them.
which is unusual for them, and I think like it lends a lot of credence to uh what Feige said, right? That going into Phase 4 with all these new titles coming up, that it's going to be a lot more personal instead of like being this large scale epic slash cosmic battles.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, right, despite the fact that it's a breezy, easy way to watch everything, like it's so dense in terms of what WandaVision and the 8 episodes that we've got so far actually hold.
Yeah.
Um, for the continuity of the MCU, right? They're completely shaking things up in a
Mm-hmm.
very novel way, and I just like it's. I think it's the best thing we've got right now out of comic book like media,
Yeah.
easily, hands down, right? Just because they've decided to do it in such a novel way that's fun,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I think relatable as well, right? Like, who doesn't love sitcoms, really? Even if you are a hardcore comic book fan, right? Like, at some point in time in your life, a sitcom or another has, kind of touched your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
On TV or on network TV, whatever it may be. And they've
Mm-hmm.
done such a good job in kind of capturing the best of each era of sitcoms.
Yep.
So there's always I feel like in the whole season itself, right? There are so many touch points for people who are just coming into Marvel
Mm.
series to kind of like feel like, oh, okay, like this doesn't carry necessarily the burden of three entire phases of Marvel movies.
Not until its last half, lah, but yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, and you can dive into that fairly easily, right? And then retroactively go and watch the movies if you've never done any of that, right? Because
Mm,
like so
correct.
much hype is coming about, and I think like with the launch of Disney Plus in Singapore, just this week especially, I'm guessing tons of people are curious and have checked out WandaVision.
Definitely,
So
yeah.
is it alienating?
Well, okay.
No.
Yeah, I agree. No to most fans.
Yeah.
But if you go over to IMDb or if you go over to Rotten Tomatoes, you will see it is a critically acclaimed show. Probably the most critically acclaimed of all the Marvel TV shows.
Yeah.
At least universally beloved because of his daringness and experimental formatting.
Mm.
That's in the critic side. You then there's always the flip side. You gotta
Yeah.
click on the audience scores. Or over on IMDb or Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes, and you will see that this show is just burdened with terrible reviews of people who just don't like what they're going for, lah, and,
Yeah.
and and this is not what they were expecting. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by alienating, lah. It may have gained some
Right.
new fans because
Right.
of its
Right. Right.
artsiness,
Yeah.
but it may have alienated, like, I guess, the more simple, straightforward. I want a boom, boom, bang, bang kind of
Well,
MCU thing.
like people who want that should just hold on to their pants because they're definitely gonna get that. With
Mm.
Winter Soldier and with Falcon and Winter Soldier,
And
right?
Loki, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like like it's not as if Marvel is going to convert all of their stuff to this, right?
Hmm.
And if any of these people who are complaining because it's not like true to the comic books or it's not comic book enough, then they seriously need to read more comics.
Well, no, I
Because,
think the people complaining are not comic book fans. They're like MCU fans, lah, who
right.
have grown
So
accustomed, and been conditioned, fairly or unfairly, by the 20 plus movies that have come so far, lah.
okay, okay, yeah, I think that's it's a fair criticism if that's all you know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But for someone, well, for us, right, having read the stranger things that have come out of Marvel over
Mm,
the years, right, like this is like a straight shoehorn for what comic book media should be like, right? Like
hmm.
every once in a while, you should get something a little strange, maybe a little difficult to understand because it's so layered, right?
Mm,
Much like we got in Legion, for example,
mm.
Um,
Agreed, agreed. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people complaining would not enjoy Legion, lah.
yeah,
That
for
is what I would
sure,
say.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, honestly, if you don't feel it's for you, then don't watch it. I don't think it's as consequential to
Mm.
your enjoyment of the entire MCU for you to trash it that badly.
Yeah, I mean, it affects the new. This WandaVision affects the new Spider-Man movie coming up and affects the
Yep,
new Doctor Strange movie coming up. But I suppose you could just read a wiki, if
exactly.
you don't like it. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Like, and in all honesty, like all the revelations just came out this week with episode 8.
Mm.
And yeah, you could watch episode 8 and be like completely satisfied, and skip all the preamble with the sitcom stuff if you really weren't comfortable with that.
Mm.
I do feel that, interspersed between the broadcast segments and the real life segments, there's a good balance between the two, right? Like
Mm.
I'm so happy Kat Dennings is back.
Mm.
Her character is amazing. I really really enjoyed Jimmy Woo's character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hoping they do the spin-off where he does the X-Files thing. I think that's gonna be
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I do have to say that like I feel like WandaVision is sort of like skewing a bit as a backdoor pilot to an Agents of Sword show.
Mm.
Where it's similar to Agents of Shield. I mean, come to think of it, where the first season premiered and they had to kind of overhaul a corrupt organization.
Yeah,
Under new leadership, I'm assuming Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy Woo are like the core of that show.
yeah,
Nothing has been announced, but it seems fairly obvious that they are trying to do that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's good for the real life stuff, right?
Hmm.
But if you don't like, I think the show, at least in the beginning, it demands affection for old TV shows from its audience, which
Yeah,
some may not have. If
yeah.
you
Okay.
if you don't smile at Wanda's kind of reality bending facsimiles of the Dick Van Dyke Show, or Bewitched, or the Brady Bunch, or Growing Pains, or Full House, which funny enough, start her Elizabeth Olsen's twin sisters.
Yeah.
Subsequently, Malcolm in the Middle, Modern
Family.
Family, and among others. You may have an issue with the show's pace and lack of action. Me, on the other hand, I loved every second of the sitcomness,
Yeah.
right? Like right down to its new opening credits each episode,
Oh,
to
favorite.
its fake commercials, kind of slyly winking at abstract representations of Wanda's trauma,
Hmm.
even down to its 20-minute runtime, fitting with the format. While many genre shows have put characters in TV universes before, this isn't exactly new for genre shows.
Yeah.
Shows like Supernatural or Legends of Tomorrow,
Hmm.
those have poked fun at tropes and skimmed the surface of shows for laughs, when they put their characters into other shows. WandaVision, though, is not making fun of sitcoms in the
Nope.
same way that Legends of Tomorrow made fun of like Downton Abbey and Friends and Star Trek that way, right?
Yeah.
It is an embrace of sitcoms. It perfectly mimics the tone, look, wardrobe, comedy styles of the various eras they're paying tribute to. Like those episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, right? Like which I love. We talked about it a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
Like where they were stuck in Friends or Star Trek. Like they were fun, but they don't work as an episode of Friends or Star Trek.
Hmm.
Like you couldn't, the entire episode couldn't have just been the Star Trek parody. Like it didn't work. Like it skimmed the surface for tropes and they made fun
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
With WandaVision, these episodes actually work as sitcoms taken on their own. If you want to ignore the mystery, if you want to ignore the creepy Twilight Zone moments, like these episodes are very solid, straight up sitcom episodes that can be enjoyed on its own sitcom merits.
Yeah.
And I can't express what an accomplishment this is to do that, to tie in with the MCU and further expand the lore as well.
Hmm.
It's very good. And I think Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany
Oh,
get get to show more life and charm and vibrancy and sheer comedic chops,
yeah.
and dramatic acting, in fact, also, than they ever have in the half a dozen movies they've been in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they are
I
so
agree.
darn likable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing stuff. The chemistry between them is incredible, right? And then just keeping in mind that they're playing two sort of like very outsider characters in Wanda and Vision as well.
Yep.
But some of the moments are just like incredible. I mean, okay, for me, the most potent moment was when she's having that flashback and they're sitting in her room in the
Mm.
Avengers compound. I don't think
Hmm.
it's tower; it should be compound by then.
Yep.
And they're talking about grief, right? Like some powerful stuff coming out of that.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that we got to see that side of that conversation, right? Like that's not something that you necessarily have time for, in the limited runtime of a proper like MCU Avengers movie.
Yes, like they get to show dramatic chops that
Hmm.
frankly they were never called upon to
Yeah.
do in the MCU films. At least not called upon, like maybe somewhat, like in the 5 minutes of screen time they had,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
but like never so deep lah. And even then, in on the flip side, in the initial episodes, they're so likable and goofy that when Wanda's sitcom reality fractures, the heartbreak is even more heartbreaking, because
Mm-hmm.
you want them to have this happily ever after in this world where problems are solved in 20 minutes. It's easy to see why someone with the history of Wanda would find so much solace in the escapism of sitcoms.
Yeah.
It's a world with easy domestic problems resolved neatly in 20 minutes. The next episode begins, and it's you're starting fresh.
Yeah.
But yeah, but like you said, on the flip side, Olsen and Bethany are also stunning dramatic actors as well. They
Mm-hmm.
play grief and confusion and trauma very deftly. I
Mm.
think Bethany in the early episodes is a charming sitcom lead. You could
Yeah.
easily see him as the Dick Van Dyke type. you know Meanwhile, Olsen plays Wanda's denial and kind of well of massive trauma. Her brother, her lover,
Yeah.
were murdered. Her parents grew up in war-torn Sokovia, who were murdered too by an accidental explosion during the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
She accidentally blew up a bunch of people in Lagos. It's a lot of things that the MCU films haven't dived into, and this is
Yeah.
such a creative and unique way to delve into all of that within a breezy package. Lah.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Yeah. So like we said, it's easy to watch, it's fun to watch, but at the same time, it's so incredibly dense and incredibly important for what they're trying to do with the rest of the MCU,
Yep.
right? And that is such a feat because so few franchises, right, have ever attempted it. First of all, and second of all, have ever done it well, which I think WandaVision is definitely a testament to.
Yes, agreed. I think it has a great cast as well outside of the lead too. I think,
Mm.
um, me having been like a big comedy fan
Yeah.
and big like kind of indie fan for a long time. I've long thought of Catherine Hahn as like the treasure that no one like appreciates. Catherine Hahn as nosy neighbor Agnes, and later on is revealed to be much more. Is such a comedic treasure.
Yeah.
She steals every scene that she's in.
Mm-hmm.
Her the Agatha Harkness theme song is a banger.
Oh.
It's a bop that I can't stop listening to.
Yeah, it's so
You,
good.
you got Tiona Paris, initially introduced as Geraldine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna like spoil her backstory, but she is a pretty major Marvel character that you've seen before.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of others, like Fred Melamed, Deborah Jorup, Emma Caulfield. Like they're all cosplaying as like the neighbors, the multicam sitcom characters. They're all fun. Kitty from that '70s show is great as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, without giving any spoilers away, like some of the people in the neighborhood and outside have surprising links to the larger MCU canon.
Yeah.
Including minor characters from Captain Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
minor characters from Ant-Man, from Thor, alongside organizations like SWORD, which was introduced in
Captain
Spider-Man: Far
Marvel.
From Home, and Captain Marvel
Yeah.
as well. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
correct. And some later on even hint at the MCU maybe teasing, starting to open up its multiverse.
Mm.
Most excitingly with maybe not inclusion of certain X-Men properties from the Fox movies. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to
Yeah.
spoil it,
Yeah.
but it is a cute tease. I don't know whether that's just a little like like just a tease, just to troll the fans, or whether it's something real. It
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really been explored yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like all those touches too.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Are we gonna dive into some spoiler territory?
We can delve into some
Yeah, yeah.
spoiler
Because like
territory.
I want to pick your brain about some stuff, right? As well. Okay, so spoiler warning in three,
Yeah.
2, 1. All right. Let's talk about the mutants first, right?
Mm,
So recasting Pietro.
mm.
What do you think?
Number one, Evan Peters was always recognized as the better Quicksilver, so
Mm-hmm.
why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Poor Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's only used on the previously ons.
It mostly did,
Mostly did,
and then
like
lying on the floor. Yeah.
yeah, getting shot 3 times. You didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Getting shot. Yeah, poor Aaron Taylor Johnson. But yes, I even enjoyed the little kick-ass joke that
Oh yeah.
that Elizabeth Olsen made, because
Yeah.
they were both in Kick-Ass. They were
Mm-hmm.
they were friends in that film. Like, if you haven't seen it, um, I think it was a cheeky way to hint at the multiverse without doing the multiverse in the same way
Yeah.
that Far From Home did Mysterio.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I also don't know where Agatha Harkness got this Quicksilver from. Like, there is still the possibility that she, as she said, she couldn't perform necromancy
Yeah.
on the original Quicksilver because his body was too far away,
Yeah.
was on another continent.
Yeah.
So, just maybe to fuck with Wanda, to snap her out of her delusions, right?
Mm-hmm.
To shake her reality a bit. She may have plucked out Pietro from a different universe and possessed him. As she said,
Mm.
she couldn't do necromancy. She said that this Pietro was a possession.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether the person being possessed is just a regular guy in the neighborhood, or if he is Pietro from Fox.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think Wanda summoned this Pietro, but Agatha possessed him.
Mm,
Right? Because that one particular scene where she reveals that Pietro, like fake Pietro, is her doing, right? You only see it like the moment that he's in front of the door.
yep.
You know what I mean? Like, and of course, the whole idea with like nothing that happens within the broadcast segment happens by coincidence, right? Because everything
Mm-hmm.
is scripted by Wanda. So
Mm-hmm.
in that sense, I think that given how they've scaled Wanda's power level with WandaVision right now, it's still all Wanda, but hijacked by Agatha Harkness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the way I think of it right now.
Mm.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. I mean, like, it is a great way to do that, and of course, they're probably going to expand on that in Doctor Strange,
Mm. And the
and
multiverse of madness. Yep.
yeah, and the Multiverse of Madness, which will then bring in everybody. It'll probably bring everybody back, lah, right? Like they have the rights to X Men now. They have the rights to Fantastic Four now. I really, really wouldn't be surprised if we see those in. Well, we wanted to see them in Phase 4 because
Mm.
yeah, but we'll probably get them in Phase 5 from the looks of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I want to kind of talk about, right, is uh chaos magic,
Mm.
right? Because I think it's incredibly bold for them to deal with in canon in the MCU Wanda's extremely complex multiple origin stories,
Mm.
right? With them being mutants at first,
Mm-hmm.
being orphans at first, and then being experimented on, being mutant offspring of Magneto, being experiments of the High Evolutionary, and
Mm.
then ultimately discovering that chaos magic is something that's inbuilt, right? Which is something that we only got within the last decade
Yep.
of Wanda's history.
Yep.
The problem is that right now with the introduction of that, and they even dealt with it in episode 8, is that chaos magic breaks all the established rules that we've seen so far in the MCU, right?
Mm.
Where Strange comes in and introduces magic to the world for
Mm.
the first time, right? Like prior to that, what we had Thor, who explains it as science that you don't understand, which is fair
Mm.
enough. Um, and even with what Agatha is doing, right? They're like established rules of magic in the Marvel and in the MCU specifically, right? And then all of a sudden now they are talking about chaos magic, which is like a whole different ball game, and already they are showing how that differs, right, from
Mm.
that. I don't know. What do you think about the attempt to tackle a fairly complex backstory and condense it enough for people to understand, right? For viewers to understand, without having to go through like years and years of like these complicated retcons and shifts in where her character and her power level is at, because they are definitely setting up Wanda to be a very important part of Phase 4.
Yeah, perhaps as the villain for the Doctor Strange movie.
Hmm.
The idea for chaos magic and the idea for streamlining Wanda's history, is something that Kevin Feige has always done.
Yeah.
Where you take complex stories like Civil War, like the Infinity War and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and really streamline them to its most basic necessities,
Yeah.
taking all the things that work and stripping away all the things that don't, to make it easily digestible for a new audience, is something Feige has done time and time again.
Hmm.
What he does with Wanda here is make it very easy for people to get into the Scarlet Witch mythology,
Yeah.
without delving into the various retcons. Number
Hmm.
one, they've stripped out the idea that she is a mutant.
Yeah.
Straight away said she was a baby burgeoning witch whose powers were amplified by the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
Also setting up the idea that among the magical community, amongst wizards and warlocks and witches, a myth or a legend of a being as powerful as the Scarlet Witch. It's a myth in the magic community that such a being exists, capable of spontaneous creation through chaos magic,
Hmm.
running magic on autopilot, not doing the traditional things like studying magic, like casting spells, book learning, like what Doctor Strange did, like what Agatha does.
Yeah.
Traditional magic. She circumvents the rules because she's a natural magic user. An easy way for people to get into that, and establish in canon what the Scarlet Witch is.
Hmm.
I much rather this happen than like some. Usually it's like, oh, like there's an article in the newspaper. Oh, she has magic powers and she wears red, so Scarlet Witch is what
Yeah.
some like J. Jonah
Yeah.
Jameson would say,
I mean,
right?
and they
This
referenced
is
that, right? The fact that she didn't have
a name, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, which already implied to me that they were gonna present a new way to weave in the name
Hmm.
and a new mythology that streamlines all the best ideas that have come from the last 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, I've absolutely no complaints about it because, very honestly, the way it was dealt with in the comic books was
Mm,
nonsense, right? Like, it's a showdown at the mall with the X-Men
mm,
when they discover when Wanda finally reveals, that she is the Scarlet Witch,
mm,
and she wields chaos magic. Like, it didn't get more like anticlimactic at that in the comics itself. So for them to deal with it in this way,
mm,
fascinating. Its
mm.
impact on the future of magic in the MCU also equally fascinating. So I'm
Yeah.
curious where they're going to go with that. And yeah, I think you're right. There's a very high chance that Wanda will be the antagonist
Mm.
in the future. But we'll see. We'll see.
She is the MCU's Dark Phoenix. I can see it. They're doing Dark Phoenix without doing Dark Phoenix, and and doing it way better than the what three times that the Fox has tried to do it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that goes, right? Like, eventually, when we do get mutants and all of that. But I mean, like, again, I applaud the effort and the thought, and the detail that has gone into creating WandaVision, right?
Mm.
Behind it, such a bold move. Just to kind of start off the phase,
Hmm.
and yeah, thoroughly enjoy it.
Also, this film also gives Monica Rambeau her powers. In a new
Yes.
in a totally new way. In a totally new way.
Yeah, I mean, like, and in a new way that isn't too far from her comic book origins,
Yep.
necessarily. I'm interested to see how they establish her power level in the future, whether or not it's going to be something that they take on in the future, kind of Agents of Sword,
Hmm.
or in future seasons of WandaVision, if there is any. I don't think so.
Yep.
Um, so I'm curious about how they're going to do that. The question is she going to be one of those TV series only superheroes? Or are they going to bring her onto the big screen?
I mean, she's the natural fit for Captain Marvel too, which they've
Absolutely.
already announced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be extremely fascinating because at some point in time, she becomes Captain Marvel, right?
Mm.
Like, she inherits the mantle and all of that when Carol is out of action. And then there's that whole brahaha when Carol comes back from the dead.
Mm.
and, and then they kind of like have this tussle for the title and what it represents before she finally becomes Photon? Or is it
Yep, it's
Spectrum?
photon. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like this Monica Rambeau, interestingly enough, for dramatic tension's sake, obviously not happy with Carol Danvers.
Yeah,
She did not look pleased when Kat Dennings brought up her name.
exactly.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Carol never came back to Earth while her mother was dying, her
Hmm.
best friend.
Yeah,
That has a lot to do with it. So that's good dramatic tension.
yeah,
It's also very good for Monica's character. It gives her a bit of depth. We've also never seen in a dramatic, real way. Far From Home played it for laughs, but
yeah,
we've never seen what happens after the unblipping, so to speak.
yeah.
What a great scene to introduce Monica
Oh,
into the show. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I think, like, there's so many questions about the blip, right? And that
Mm,
people have just generally been having during the span of time when they were doing Endgame. And now that they've kind of like showed what it's actually like, I think it would be fascinating to kind of see that. We got glimpses of the survivor stories,
mm,
um, at the kind of like grief support group, right?
mm-hmm.
In Ant Man. What's it, Ant
Uh,
Man?
no, it was an Endgame,
In Endgame,
and
yeah,
also in a more humorous fashion in Far From Home.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great to kind of see that. I think it answers a lot of questions that people have been having
Hmm.
about that, and I hope they kind of build of that. Like I would totally a support group for people who have been unblipped, especially if they're the superheroes, would be really
Hmm.
funny
Yep.
as well. Yeah, so we'll see. I'm kind of curious. I read this kind of this comment, right, that was saying that given um how apparently Brie Larson hasn't been a fan favorite or very favored within the MCU camp itself, right?
Yeah,
Um,
there's a very loud group that openly dislikes Brie Larson's open feminist views.
yeah,
Uh, Again, it's very loud, but the $1 billion box office for Captain Marvel argues otherwise, lah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like there have been plenty of rumors about how like it's because she was such a late addition to the
Hmm.
MCU, right? Like she doesn't fit very well with the cast and stuff like that. I'm just curious, how they're just gonna set up some kind of tension between Monica and Captain Marvel later in the future, and if that has any kind of implications in much further on.
Hmm.
Because within the comics itself, Captain Marvel is has become problematic, right? Like with Civil War 2 and her
Mm.
actions there, her obvious like relationships that and the people she's killed and her relationship with Tony Stark and
Hmm.
all of that. It's very interesting as we kind of move along to see whether or not the MCU pivots on some of the big characters to show them as not completely heroes.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering, like, if they are starting to set some of that up early.
In purely pro wrestling terms, when you set up someone as a good guy that the audience rejects,
Yeah,
you turn them heel,
yeah,
then the audience accepts them.
yeah,
And that could be done with Captain Marvel. In fact, the audience might actually start liking her if they turn her heel.
yeah,
She becomes a bit more of an anti-hero than a hero,
yeah,
which could be fun as well. With Monica try being the new official Captain Marvel, and she is like the anti Captain Marvel.
yeah.
Also the show introduces new villains. Like
Mm,
I actually really like that the show has three primary villains. I mean, number
yeah,
one, Wanda is clearly the villain of her own show, but she
yeah,
has two antagonist villains, and one is on the tech side, and one is on the magic side.
yeah.
With the tech villain being Hayward, introducing anti-vision into canon,
uh,
very cool.
yeah,
And
very
then you have
cool.
Agatha Harkness being the magic villain, very cool as well. So I like that they're keeping the magic tech
Yeah,
dichotomy.
I really love how they introduced Agatha Harkness here. I
Hmm.
think in comics continuity has always been. I mean, like, okay, she's like this mentor kind of like sensei character, right? To Wanda with like this extremely kind of strained relationship. I do like the fact that straight from the start they go with like a straight up antagonistic role for her, right? Because it
Hmm.
makes it a lot easier and less like wishy washy in terms of the storytelling.
Yeah,
I
but at the same time, she's still mentoring Wanda.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
in her own strange way.
Mm.
I squealed a little with Antivision.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wow, like that. Honestly, that outfit, right, in the comic books is one of my favorite like Vision outfits.
Hmm.
In general, it's just kudos to them for like thinking of bringing that in.
Yeah.
And it's just like so many nod and wings, especially with the Halloween episode and the classic costumes as well.
Yeah, I also see WandaVision setting up a different aspect of the larger MCU, specifically with respect to the Young Avengers. Um,
Mm.
of course, I think Monica and Peter Parker will probably be the leaders of that. Wanda's
Yeah,
children will probably be part of that. Kamala Khan, a recently announced series on Disney Plus will also be a
yeah.
part of that. So very cool this is a very consequential show in many ways.
Oh
It does
yeah,
set
for
up a lot
sure.
of things. Yeah, yeah. And I think that every MCU movie does a very good job of like telling a main story and setting up the larger law of the world. Lah.
Yeah, Young Avengers is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'm guessing Shuri's going to have a stint in Young Avengers. From the
If
looks
she's
of
not
it.
Yeah, if she's not cancelled, lah, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I mean, Kamala Khan definitely looking forward to
Mhm.
that. I wonder if Pepper Potts is going to come back.
Mhm.
because recently she was, I mean, like not so long ago, she was the leader of the Young Avengers.
Yep.
So we'll see if that works. In addition to that, Viv from Divisions was also part of that crew.
Yeah.
And it could be something that happens like in kind of like the resolution of WandaVision in the
Mhm.
future. So I'm not surprised, and like it's great for them to kind of start expanding into a different teams. I think that it's always been a fascinating part of following the comics, right? That you have all these different teams and all the different adventures they go on to. But
Mm.
for a cinematic universe to do that, I don't think we've
Mm.
quite gotten that yet outside of DC animated universe.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I guess to wrap it up, right? Like in conclusion, I actually love the season,
Yeah.
but I don't think that this is the greatest season of MCU ever.
Yeah, that's
uh,
fair.
uh, I think Agents of Shield season 4 and 5,
Yeah.
Punisher season 1, and Daredevil season 1 rank a little bit higher,
Yeah.
but this is certainly the most creative, experimental, and inventive thing the MCU has ever done,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
deserves major props for that. So I think I'm giving this an 8 out of 10.
It's an 8 for me as well.
Nice. Yeah, I was actually initially going to give it 7.5 until episode 8. So keep in mind, I do have to say that we have not seen the finale, so our
Yeah.
rating might even get even higher once we've seen episode 9. But
Yeah.
as of episode 8, our scores are 8 and 8.5 respectively, which is very
Yep.
high already.
Yeah.
You know,
It is. It is. If your prediction is right, and we do get the all the whams and the bams in the final episode, yeah,
Vision versus Anti-Vision, Wanda versus Agatha. Oh yeah, great.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. But of course, I really hope they do give us an interesting resolution for this season. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we'll see how that plays out. So a couple of days more before episode 9 comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we might talk about it again. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and then the week after episode 9 comes out, Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out. My
Yeah,
goodness, MCU on a non-stop roll this year. Keep
yeah.
in mind that they will have no week break this year. It's MCU back to back. It's WandaVision and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier and then Black Widow and then
Mm,
Loki and then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and then Spider-Man and then Eternals. This is a big year for the MCU.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It feels like they've been gestating Phase 4 for quite a while now.
I think three of the
Uh,
titles had to be pushed to this year, so that's why.
that's true, but it's working in their favor for sure, right? Like at the same time, like with DC trying to play catch up and failing all the time.
Mm.
This last couple of years, like 2021 looks like it's gonna be amazing for the MCU and for fans of the MCU alike.
Yeah, and if you ever need a reason to subscribe to Disney Plus, that's it. There's not one week where you can cancel your subscription. There's a new, there's a new, there's a new Disney animation, Marvel or Pixar or Star Wars coming out like back to back to back to back to back, boom
Yeah,
boom boom.
it's crazy.
It's like it's soon gonna be Disney Plus and chill. It's slowly taking over. Like
Yeah,
now that Disney is worldwide, it used to be only in North America. Now that Disney Plus is worldwide, plus the back catalog of Disney Plus,
yeah.
classic cartoons, gargoyles, and shit like that. Incredible. If you want to subscribe, it's definitely worth it. And I do have to say that Star and especially Net Geo is great on Disney Plus too. So
Mm,
well worth your money.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. We've spent like about 45 minutes talking about WandaVision. And it's a great show, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
And probably, the first big show of the year, and it heralds a new era for Marvel. So of course we spend that much time on it. We're not Marvel shills, but we're Marvel fans. We've loved nearly everything. Love to like lah, nearly everything they've done.
yep,
Yeah, so yeah, that's WandaVision. It's great. You should watch it. If you're not into the sitcom stuff, sit through it because once it gets into the MCU stuff, it's very good.
yep. It
So
is.
yeah, highly recommend it. Next up, let's talk about a little smaller film that will be debuting on the projector this week and next week. It's sneak previewing if you live in Singapore at the projector this week, and then it releases wide next week. It is Saint Maud, which I feel is the first great horror movie of 2021,
Mm,
and a gripping entry into A24's art horror canon. This is Rose Clark's directorial debut, and it follows a newly devout hospice nurse named Maud who becomes obsessed with saving her dying patient's soul, but sinister forces and her own sinful past threatened to put an end to her holy calling.
yeah.
It is both clear-eyed about matters of belief and
Mm-hmm.
wonderfully abstract about how said beliefs manifest in reality. It is an ecstatically bloody affair that imagines the inner world of a young woman driven to violence by voices both inside and outside of her head. It walks the fine line between religious fervor and madness. And Saint Maud is this very dread laden, deeply unsettling film
Yep.
that kind of folds in psychological terror, spiritual warfare, and sexual repression into a character study of faith versus mental illness. Impeccable filmmaking and a dynamic central performance from both Moffat Clark and Jennifer Ely
Mm.
will keep viewers gripped till its shockingly satisfying conclusion that offers you the best of both worlds.
Yep.
I won't spoil the ending,
Yeah.
but regardless of which way you want to believe, it offers you both endings, and that's great. It Maud, has this very close relationship with God. She's born again, right? As detailed in the narration of her prayers, and
Yeah.
and her astute and very clever patient Amanda, a former dancer, kind of susses out that Maud's devout faith is a recent conversion, and
Mm.
Maud confesses that she hears God's voice and feels His presence, and her body is often overcome in like this writhing, nearly orgasmic fits, the way that she describes it. And
Yeah.
and she hopes that Amanda might feel this ecstasy of spirit too, that Maud might shepherd her to the grace of God that she herself feels, and she's determined to become Amanda's savior.
Hmm.
That is the crux of the film. What do you think about Saint Maud?
Oh wow, unnerving. It's incredibly unnerving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like firstly because like it's so beautifully shot. The acting is like incredibly on point. The body horror that we do get is
Mm,
skin crawlingly good.
mm,
Um, all the time. Like I was so taken. I think in particular, all of the moments of ecstasy
mm,
that she has, right, are incredible, right? Like they are so visceral watching them on the screen. I it felt. I mean, it's a slow burn for sure,
mm.
right? But it didn't feel over long. I mean, like it is what hour ish.
25.
Yeah, an hour 25 or so. I think like it was a very interesting kind of like well contained story for the amount of time that they spent on it.
Mm-hmm.
I found the soundtrack unnerving as well. There were just moments in
Mm,
time like that where it's very faint and in the background and kind of like insidious, but it
mm,
completely sets the tone for what's happening on screen. And because it is barely noticeable unless you're paying direct attention to it, which is
mm.
difficult because what's on screen is always almost captivating, right?
Yep.
Regardless of the shot that are happening, the conversations that's happening, or just like the incredible body acting by the two lead actresses.
Mm-hmm.
um it really is like something like what's going on, why do I feel like like creeped out, right? Despite the fact that like it's so subtle, and I think that really kind of stood out to me. As someone who has had like personally spoken with people of belief systems and things like that where they do experience that kind of thing, and
Mm,
seen some of the like seen things similar to that, like
mm,
it really did touch on a couple of nerves for me, which just kind of
mm,
added to the overall experience of watching Sim Mod.
mm-hmm.
But overall, like I really like this. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it.
Mm,
I'm not sure if it's a film to be enjoyed. Yeah, basically.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You don't enjoy it the way that Maud finds pleasure in God.
Yeah.
She uses God to displace the pain that she experiences in the world.
Yeah.
The pain of the sick and dying, the pain that people inflict upon others, and her own psychic and emotional pain.
Yeah.
I think she externalizes that mental agony in different ways. She kind of lashes out at Amanda's cruel whims,
Mm,
or in self-destructive behavior, or in the kind of ancient masochistic rituals of self-flagellation.
yeah.
Maud believes that pain should never be wasted. That is a direct quote.
Yeah.
That it should lead to some lesson, or a salvation, or a blessing, or a transformation of some kind. But sometimes life is painful for no reason. And the thing is, Maud's description of God speaking to her is not homosexual. It is sexual.
Yeah.
And Glass wants the audience to ponder whether Maud's fervent belief is perhaps powered by loneliness, but
Mm.
visually, the viewer is in Maud's head. She
Yeah.
perceives supernatural danger all around her. So, still as compelling as these visions are, I think Glass cleverly injects uncertainty at every turn, alluding
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
buried trauma in Maud's past that might be fueling her delusions, or it might not. These delusions might be real. Um,
Yeah.
but most compelling dynamics, of course, between Maud and Amanda, right? That kind of hints at this like weird forbidden dynamic. Like, Ely is outstanding as the kind of wary, flirty former dancer who has
Yeah.
resolved to drink and smoke her way through her final days of cancer. And as her relationship with Maud becomes surprisingly close, I think Glass emphasizes a lurking danger through just Maud's kind of furtive glances and tense silences. You never know what she's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's like this character in desperate need of affection,
Yeah.
but she often reacts to warmth with hostility. What I perhaps love most about Saint Maud is how Glass wants us to understand her maligned heroine,
Mm-hmm.
who is at once villain and victim. I
Yeah.
think Morford Clark is outstanding in this role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about the acting from the two principals?
Uh, Mark Clark is amazing.
Yeah.
Like just how from moment to moment, right? I think especially in the earlier half of the film, right, where she
Mm,
goes between the scenes where she does the voiceovers, right? And then of course the scenes where she's experiencing these moments of religious fervor,
mhm.
or where she's kind of like machinating, like she has to wear so many faces
Yep.
in those periods of time, right? Like and in classic kind of like unreliable narrator mode, she does it so well
Mhm.
that it is completely believable,
Mm.
and but at the same time, like it it is so like, oh god, like really, like there are just moments in time where these subtle facial nuances,
Yeah.
as things are going on screen, that you it's enough for you just to kind of catch it, right? But again, like completely unnerving. When she's being spoken to, when she notices something, the furtive glances that you expected, all of
Mhm.
them are tinged with um multiple layers of emotion that I feel are immediately caught by the audience, but not necessarily verbalized or obvious.
Yep.
And like
Yep.
it's so good. Like I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to pull that off so subtly, right? Like
Mhm.
any misstep in doing so would make this a farce, honestly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so much of what makes a mod so powerful in terms of the way the story is told, and her struggle, because it really is a struggle.
Mhm.
um it really boils down to these like quiet moments of like pure acting powers, and
Mhm.
it's quite crazy. I think Jennifer Ellie is amazing as her character,
Yeah.
and she fulfills her role very very well as both kind of like antagonist slash foil, I
Yeah.
guess, to Clark's character. But I mean, like Moffat Clark is like, oh, so good.
Outstanding, right? She's gonna
Yeah,
be in
yeah.
the new Lord of the Rings TV show on Amazon. Psyched
Whew.
to see her in that. I had no
Yeah,
idea who she was when she was casted for it.
yeah,
She's the lead in that show, and now I have more confidence in Amazon's Lord of the Rings
yeah,
because of her
yeah.
casting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be. I mean, like I had no idea who she was. I didn't make the connection until I was doing research for us to do this review,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, oh wow, like that's quite a a powerhouse to be putting at the forefront of something as big as the Lord of the Rings series.
Indeed,
Um,
and they discovered her when she was cheap. I think her contract will probably go up from now on.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like with
Yeah.
a with an outing like Saint Maud, damn, like it's
Yeah.
gonna be insane.
Yeah.
Very very excited to see what she does in the future. I mean, like
Hmm.
she's one of those like complete unknowns that
Until now,
have,
lah. Yeah.
yeah, until now, and to come out with in a very small indie film that
Hmm.
has been making a lot of waves thanks to A24 and their distribution of it. It's just like,
Hmm.
yeah, like kudos, like so excited to see where she goes from here. But like her performance, like incredibly just stomach churning at times. But so good, so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I That's why I mean her performance, Rose Clark's direction. The overall atmosphere and creepiness of the film, the unsettling nature of the horror, is why I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. Just because like I do think it could have afforded to be a little bit faster paced in certain
Mm,
portions.
hmm
Some portions, especially going from Act One to Act Two, felt a tad indulgent. But of course, I'm nitpicking
mm.
here. So like, yeah, it's an 8 for me.
Nice. Next up, I'm going to delve into quick hits. Well, I'll quickly run through, I think, a very short list, 7 or 8 titles that I
Yeah.
caught and maybe my co host did not catch. First of which is Little Fish. It is a dreamy and devastating indie sci fi romance that
Mm-hmm.
imagines a global epidemic where people suddenly lose their memories due to something called neuroinflammatory affliction. NIA is what the film calls it, which is a rapid Alzheimer's like disease.
Yeah.
No one knows how it's caught. No one knows whether it's airborne or whatnot. Primarily because most of the population, even the experts are losing their memories. So the conditions for finding a cure for this are not good. So Little Fish follows a couple who are Jude Williams and Emma Ryerson, played by Jack O'Connell and Olivia Cook, respectively. They are grappling with the realities of NIA as they slowly start to forget each other,
Yeah.
not only each other but their loved ones, the world around them, their passions, and all of that. This is a beautifully acted and melancholy love story that
Mm-hmm.
explores the disintegration of a relationship without closure or reason. And it applies nimble, non-linear storytelling, kind of blending flashbacks and the present to offer a microcosm of a disoriented world where every single person shares a version of their grief. How do you grieve when everyone shares your grief? There's nothing special about you, but it's still
Yeah.
painful. While it has a sci-fi premise, this is actually a very grounded story anchored by great performances from both leads. A very good movie about a doomed relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to dock some points, it's because it maybe shares a few too many similar beats as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, as we've just reviewed on Behold. Yeah, which is why it's a 7 out of 10. If it was a little bit more original, it would have been an
Yeah.
8. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Next up is Space Sweepers, South Korea's Netflix big budget, star studded Korean sci fi space epic. It is set in 2092, and Earth's pollution levels are so toxic that a new colony, replete with green fields and breathable air, is being developed on Mars, overseen by the altruistic UTS Corporation. However, stop me if you heard this before. Only the wealthy elite can offer can afford to relocate,
Mm.
leaving billions stranded back on Earth. Meanwhile, we follow a Korean spaceship called Victory. They're kind of a ragtag crew of garbage collectors who patrol the solar system, taking out trash. Very blue collar workers. Lah. One day, they stumble upon a young android girl
Yeah.
revealed to be a stolen weapon of mass destruction. So they see an opportunity to sell her back to the radicals who stole her. This film is kind of bursting with space dog fights, robot sidekicks, and wicked megalomaniacs, while the fate of the Earth hangs precariously in the balance. But it's so encumbered by its mission to get Korean cinema up to speed with the
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi blockbuster game that it feels like an exhaustive box ticking exercise
Yeah.
designed by committee, rather than the realization of coherent story. Like, oh, we want a space fight, tick. We want a robot, tick. We want, yeah, uh whatever, like, like relocating to another planet, tick. That kind of stuff. It's
Yeah.
just so derivative. It's filled with so many I hate to say it, basic bitch space sci-fi tropes. you know
Yeah.
Space Sweepers kind of fails to find its own footing, and its unique selling point is totally missing after that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
melting pot of everything and still ends up being about nothing. And I think that's why it struggles to keep viewers engaged
Mm-hmm.
with little to no attempt to build its characters. So it is a 4 out of 10.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
did you catch Space Sweepers?
I saw the I saw the trailer. I was like, huh, that looks pretty interesting. Like the production value, like you can't deny the production value, especially in
Yeah,
the trailer. And then I caught like half an episode. And I was just like, oh, I think I know where this is going. You know what? Never mind. I have other things to watch.
yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. So I'm glad to know that I didn't waste any time on it.
Yes, and I would advise no one else to waste any time on it. Similarly, I'm going to be talking about next about the new BBC America adaptation
Yeah.
of Terry Pratchett's beloved, massive best-selling Discworld novels. It
Oh
is
man.
called The Watch, and watching it as a fan of Terry Pratchett, um, this is such a confusing experience because
Yeah.
it's tonally confusing. It's
Okay.
very, 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 very loosely adapted. You know, this very loose,
Uh huh.
very, very, very loose. This is a surface level adaptation. Um, all the things that have been lifted from Pratchett's long-running satirical fantasy series, you know,
Yeah.
the name, the plot points, the orangutan librarian, that's all accurate. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's the actual show, which is kind of this grungy effort that, for some reason, really aspires to be a punk rock cop show,
Yeah.
complete with, like, you know, flashing neon lights, needle drops from the Pixies, a liberal dosage of, you know, kind of raised middle fingers. You know, here's the sad truth: like, neither of those two disparate tones work together.
Mm.
And even neither work individually, let alone put together. This is a very, very bad show. It is difficult to figure out who the hell the watch is for. It is not for the fans of the book it's based on. It clearly isn't. It's
Mm-hmm.
not for fans of cop shows. It is too, you know, anarchic and disorganized. It is not for punks because, well, they feature cops. The lack of a narrative build is evident in the scripting as well. You know, the watch is repeatedly uses familiar tropes as though simply acknowledging that the trope exists counts as effective character development. There is no rising action or stakes, and
Yeah.
rarely a sense of anything mattering beyond an excuse to get us to the next set piece. You know, is it watchable? Maybe. Some set pieces are fun,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just a pity that, you know, so much work and time to adapt such a beloved and iconic source material went into something so pleasantly empty. Which is why this is a 3 out of 10 for me.
Oh man. I wish
Yeah.
Hardy was around to chime in on this, given how big of a Terry Pratchett fan he is.
Indeed, you know, yeah, yeah. Anyways, next up, we'll be talking about Superman and Lois, which
Mm-hmm.
is the Arrowverse's next show. You know, the Arrowverse at this moment kind of finds itself at a crossroads. You know,
Yeah.
Supergirl and Black Lightning both coming to an end this season. The
Mm-hmm.
Flash coming to an end next year.
Yeah.
Its parent show Arrow has already concluded. You know, there's only Legends of Tomorrow left. So they need to, you know, revive.
Yeah.
And this newest series, Superman and Lois, is crucial in that revitalization of the shared universe somewhat. Lah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, if this fails, I don't know where the DC CW verse goes.
Batwoman.
So indeed, right? You know, so of course, this is a spin-off of Supergirl,
Yeah.
with Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch reprising their respective roles. But the show is, at least in the beginning, a very standalone show. It requires no knowledge of any other show. You don't have to watch Supergirl even.
Nice.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah. So what Superman and Lois does to differentiate from other Superman shows and movies is the addition of two teenage children, Jonathan and Jordan Kent. So the
Mm.
idea is that this show will juggle the challenges that Superman faces when he's saving the world with those that he encounters as a working parent. So here's
Okay.
what's good. Yeah, there's a reason that Arrowverse fans have been clamoring for Hoechlin and Tulloch to get their own Superman series.
Yeah.
They are both very good at playing Clark Kent and Lois Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible chemistry. They play each other very well. This is the best Clark and Lewis since Terry Hatcher, you know, back in the day, you know, in the
Yeah.
90s Superman show.
Yeah.
Um, so the two leads are intensely charming and likable. Here's the bad. Their two kids are intensely unlikable.
Oh,
We barely
okay.
even get a chance to know them. We don't even know them to be on their side, you know. And then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, the story immediately revolves around their angst and resentment. It is very annoying and not well written. These children are a chore to watch. You know the introduction of annoying children in shows. You
Yeah.
know, like you
Yeah.
know, when they need to revamp the show, suddenly they introduce, oh, the kid that is like resentful of the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that happens from day one. That's what Superman and Lois is. Like, the two title characters are winsome. The family melodrama and clunky writing, and the kids are a drag, which is why half half. This is a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Very sad.
Oh man, that's sad. That's really really sad because they look the part, they feel the part every time they've been on Supergirl.
Hmm.
That's it's a bit sad. I mean, the kids are an interesting addition. I'm guessing that
From
was
the comics.
going from Rebirth, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. So, oh man, what a waste. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next up, I'm going to be talking about Earwig and the Witch, which is
Mm,
directed by Goro Miyazaki, the son of Hayao Miyazaki. It
yeah.
is Studio Ghibli's first feature in 4 years. It is also the first Ghibli movie to forego its trademark hand-drawn 2D animation for a full-blown 3D CG animation. The film follows the titular Earwig, who grows up in an orphanage in the British countryside. He has no idea that that her mother had
Yeah.
magical powers. So her life changes dramatically when a strange couple takes her in and she is forced to live with a selfish witch. As the headstrong young girl sets out to uncover the secrets of her new guardians, she discovers a world of spells and potions and a mysterious song that may be the key to finding the family that she's always wanted. So, how does Ghibli's first CG film fare? In one word, horrendously. It is it is a pronounced departure from tradition that
mm,
proves dispiritingly generic in both appearance and tone. The
mm-hmm.
problem with Earwig and the Witch has more to do with its uninspired story than the hokey animation, which is sad because the animation is truly bad. But yes, ironically, the 3D animation here feels more flat and falls more flat than any of the 2D works that Ghibli has ever done. It denies viewers the sense of Ghibli whimsy and wonder. This may be hands down the worst Ghibli film that's ever been made.
Yeah.
It's a 2 out of 10 for me. It is below the watch. This is how bad it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Unfortunate.
sad. Finally, I'll be talking about Netflix's newest TV show out of Europe. It is called Tribes of Europa. Um, it's not set on the moon of Europa, sadly. It is set in a future Europe that has been renamed Europa.
Uh,
It's set in the year 2029. So
okay.
it's after an incident called the Black December led to a technological blackout. So it forces humanity back into the Dark Ages without any electricity. Nearly 50 years later, in 2074, the mysterious disaster has torn Europe apart, turning it into the titular Europa. lah. It's now full of like disparate tribes. So Tribes of Europa focuses on three siblings who set out to change the course of the world after the global disaster. So this is a German series that was created by the team behind Dark. So I had high hopes going into
Mm-hmm.
it. But unfortunately, this kind of post apocalyptic, Brexit inspired show is really derivative and nothing unique.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen The Rain, if you've seen The 100, if you've seen The Hunger Games, or a million other similar shows, or The Maze Runner or whatever, you know what to expect. It's not terrible. It's just you've seen it all before.
Uh,
4.5 out of 10. Yeah, and that wraps it up for hard hits. For quick hits this month.
oh man. Okay. Okay. Well, at least like Little Fish sounds interesting. I think I
Little
will
Fish,
check that out.
it's pretty good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I will check
It
that
is.
out. Yeah, you were
Sorry.
saying okay. I just wanted to ask about a bit about Little Fish, right? Like, did you feel that um the premise too similar to Eternal Sunshine, or
It
was
has a
it the fact that it was like tonally too similar?
It's totally similar. The premise obviously shares surface similarities, but
Yeah.
it's almost the anti-Eternal Sunshine because none of these people chose this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Okay.
it's very different thematically in that way, lah. Because
Yeah.
no one chose to erase their memories. This is happening against their will. So that is what makes it different, lah. But at the same time, thematically, the melancholy, the way it's shot, the love story, that feels beat for beat very similar to Eternal Sunshine.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think I might check it out now when we have time for that.
yeah. It's a
But the
short film.
rest,
1 hour 20 again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I've never ever had only one good review for Quick Hits.
Yeah, I realize and it's a bit of an oddity, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, well, I mean, it will happen time to time. Well, yeah, at least there's one good one. It could be worse.
at least that's one good one. Yeah, yeah. Thank God for Little Fish, but skip everything else. Maybe Superman and Lois might get better. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, like, I am not a fan of the annoying kid trope.
Yeah.
If they do resolve that fairly quickly, I wouldn't mind giving it a chance. I mean, like, I've enjoyed Supergirl. We've enjoyed most of the Arrowverse, right? Or
Mm,
now CW verse.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm hoping. I mean, I want them to succeed and to continue to make good stuff. While we wait for DCEU to get their shit together.
Yeah, never gonna
Um,
happen. Yeah.
yeah, so like, if they're banking on this to kind of make it big, I really do want it to be good.
Yeah, hopefully, man. We still have Legend, so there's that.
That's true.
Next up, let's delve into a very thick ISIS
Ugh.
anime corner. Lots to get into.
Yeah.
Kick it off.
Yeah, so I've basically I'm going to split this into kind of three parts. I'll be talking about the heavy hitter returning series that we've kind of covered before. All
Hmm.
of them have been recommended in different seasons on different episodes of Genre Equality.
Yep.
Um, and just to let you guys know, like, how many of them come back. And then I'm going
Hmm.
to talk about two returning series that have taken like really long hiatuses that I just want to dive into as recommendations, and then just five kind of like new anime series that have really stood out this season.
Hmm.
Much more than like it's an unusually large winter release schedule, right? Because so many things were kind of put on hold. So there usually it's either like the spring or the summer seasons that get like the best stuff, but we've got like a chock a block of stuff right now, and we're just
Mm.
gonna dive into it with the returning series. And the first one, to no surprise of anyone, of course, is Attack on Titan final season.
Yeah.
Now that Eren and gang have finally found out what is in the Jaeger family basement, and
Hmm.
he's done his fair share of eating strange things and getting powerful, which is becoming a meme at this point in
Hmm.
time in the anime world.
Yeah.
Uh,
PDs.
yeah, exactly. We find him and the gang at odds with Gabby Braun and Falco Grice this season, who are characters that we follow a bit
Yeah.
more of, right? Who are these trainees who are trying to inherit one of the seven titans under Mali's control, and aid their nation in eradicating the Eldians.
Mm.
Uh, it has been okay. Season 4 has recently been inherited by Mappa, right? Which are the guys who have been doing Jujutsu Kaisen.
Mm.
And for once in season 4,
Hmm.
um, Attack on Titan no longer suffers from the perennial problem of pacing, like
Right.
really poor pacing. Like from the get go, every scene in every episode semantically has meaning to the plot and drives it forward. There is no more like, oh, I'm gonna show you another like 5 minutes of a fight scene that took place 3 episodes ago because I don't know, I don't have anything for
Y-
you, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't take me 5 fucking episodes to carry a fucking rock like 100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
While everybody has like this like world changing conversations while watching me carry a rock, right? The
Indeed.
fight
Yeah.
scenes are amazing, right? The fight scenes here top anything that has been shown in the 3 seasons prior, and that's saying a lot for a series like Attack on Titan.
Nice.
Honestly, I dropped Attack on Titan near the end of season 2. I didn't even bother with season 3 just because of
Hey,
how bad the pacing was.
same.
On recommendation, I think midway through season 3, I think Phil was the one who was just like, dude, you're missing out if you're not watching now. I got
Nice.
back on that, and of course, like, it being on Netflix right now, given how big it's grown,
Mm.
the fan base has grown, has made it a lot more accessible for people to kind of binge it. Like, season 4 is redemptive in so many ways, right? Like, not to say that the
Right.
story wasn't good, but for last 12 of the second half of season 2 and last 12 of season 3, like, we weren't really sure where they were going, because I think at that point in time it was catching up to the manga.
Mm.
And we didn't know where the manga was going. Like, the all the dilly dallying was happening in the manga, right? Which made it very difficult for them to kind of convert that, to adapt that, like, in a meaningful way. I think
Yeah.
with this being the final season, like, it's in the title, it's the final season, guys. We're on the home stretch. We finally, got all the like mysteries out of the way. It's resolution time.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need for any of that kind of like, ooh, we don't really know what's going on, let's kind of take our time to explore here. None of that,
Right.
right? We are going to give you action, we're going to give you flashbacks, we're going to keep moving the plot forward. to its climax in a way that the fans of 3 seasons have been waiting for. So
Mm.
really, really enjoy Attack on Titan final season. It's something extremely different, and Mappa continues to make amazing art. Um, Going forward, I think the soundtrack, especially this season, is like pretty epic, right? Like the soundtrack in season one was really epic because we didn't really get that for a while from any other anime at that point.
Mm. Yeah.
But like season four, damn, like the final season, like soundtrack is really, really solid. So
Nice.
yeah, Attack on Titan final season. I haven't really talked about season two or season three just because like I didn't like the way that it panned out
Yeah.
in terms of pacing. But yeah, we're back,
Nice.
and it's
Good
worth
to
a
know. Good to
watch.
know.
And you will be 1 week behind if you're watching it on Netflix. But that's fine, right? Otherwise, you can find it on Funimation or Crunchyroll.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Next up, we're gonna talk about ReZero, second season, part two. ReZero, also an extremely popular franchise. Now going into the better part of 50 episodes,
Whew.
where we are at now.
Yeah.
Um, if you aren't tired of Subaru dying and coming back to life again, if you aren't
Mm.
tired of him like crying and wailing his heart out while screaming Amelia's name all the time, uh,
Yo.
you know, then I think it's worth kind of getting into the second season part two.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it's not as masochistic as season one, right? Like
Okay.
ReZero is an extremely masochistic series.
Yeah.
It's extremely painful to watch in parts, but people keep coming back, and I kind of understand why because I'm still watching it anyway.
Ah.
But the part two of season two does help bring
Mm.
a lot more, at least up to this point, right? We're halfway through the season. Bring a lot more answers to the questions that we've had all along. I think season two started out, and I said this in the review of when season two started last year. Started out kind of strange. We've got Rem missing, and you're not really sure what's going on, and you got a new kind of antagonist that you need to kind of defeat, and not really they kind of waddled a lot. Part two does pick up the pace quite a bit.
Mm.
But it does not veer away from the central premise of the show, in which that he has to suffer a great deal and die for this girl who very honestly doesn't really care. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you love that shit, then ReZero is back for the second half of the second season. I think it's
Mm.
worth watching if you manage to survive part one and you want to see some sort of resolution. I
Yeah.
don't know if this is going to get any better than it's been. I think like the first season of ReZero, the first couple of episodes really caught people, and by the time they were just too invested
Right.
emotionally with all the beating yourself up and all of that.
Mm.
But yeah, ReZero is back.
Yeah.
uh Yet another very, very popular one is season two of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime.
Yeah.
This season, they've upped the ante in terms of what they're telling with the story. It's a lot less about it's a lot less about Rimuru's personal journey and the people around him. It moves into like nation building and economics and politics and all of that. Uh, this this particular arc that they've been going into climaxes, and no spoilers for nobody who has read the manga or knows what's going on. It climaxes into a incredible face off against multiple antagonistic parties slash nations, who
Wow.
are all out to destroy the nation of Tempest,
Mm.
with some amazing and heartbreaking revelations and resolutions. And
Mm-hmm.
it's still very, very good.
Yeah.
I don't think it felt as shonen as season one. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have the same follow the same kind of like power ups and trajectory. It's grown into a much more mature series with where they go with season
Oh,
two.
interesting. Okay.
And Of course, still plenty of fan service, plenty of hilarious moments and asides and all of that.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying That Time I Got Reincarnated as Slime season two. I think this series right now is going on strength to strength, and I'm really curious to see where they go from here because this is a very, very big arc. And
Mm.
then it kind of tones down a while in the manga, so we'll see, where they choose to end this because we are coming to the end of the arc in the middle of the season,
Right.
and then we'll see where they go from there. right?
Awesome.
Next up, Dr. Stone Stone Wars, which is basically season two of Dr. Stone. We've talked about Dr. Stone. Big fans of this semi-educational. Actually, there's a lot of educational stuff we're talking about this week.
Yeah.
Semi-educational anime about a group of youngsters who revive into a world that has been encased in stone. This season focuses on the war between that has been brewing for a while now, and whether or not the nation of science can triumph over the brutality of a perfect stone world,
Hmm.
like Shishio's vision of a stone world. It's been interesting. I feel like there's been a bit less focus on the invention and science side this time round, because they do need to do a lot of like plot
Right.
moving
Okay.
forward, and the introduction of like a much wider cast of characters. And
Yeah.
of course, in typical fashion, like having to do flashbacks for each one of them to humanize them and so on and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
as is done in most anime. But yeah, it's fascinating to kind of see how that plays out, and how the different kind of like little devious machinations of the science side of things go.
Mm.
Midway through hasn't really come to a climax yet. But yeah, if you've enjoyed season one of Doctor Stone, then season two continues the story with the whole gang, and it has been very enjoyable since.
Awesome. Okay.
Uh, just a quick touch point on Beastars second season. If you guys have been listening for a while, you will know that Hidze really loved Beastars because
Mm.
Zootopia realized, right?
I've not seen Visa season 2 though.
Yeah, it's good. It definitely continues the thing, like everything that's good in season one continues to be good in season two. I do feel like the plot gets a bit messy,
Mm.
because there are a lot more things going on right now. Like I think they feel comfortable enough, they feel like the audience is more comfortable with the characters, and for them to kind of like make it a bit more complex, the interpersonal relationships are messier, is the best way I would
Mm.
describe it. As you know, I wasn't that big a fan of Beastars because I felt like it had been done before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I caught the first couple of episodes just to get a feel for where they're at this point in time. Yeah, as far as kind of like off kilter rom com dramedies go, like it's still very good.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Next up, we're gonna talk about Cells at Work second season and Cells at Work Code Black. So I'm not entirely caught up
Mm-hmm.
with both of them at this point in time. But maybe you want to share a bit. I mean, you've been raving about it for a while.
Mm.
Of the two, which do you, okay?
Yeah.
For our listeners, right? I think we touched upon it in an episode or two ago of Behold, where we talked about like the differences, but we just run through that. So, Cells at
Yeah.
Work season two is, well, Cells at Work, right? Season two,
Mhm.
incredibly enjoyable educational anime of anthropomorphic cells in your body or anybody's body, really, of
Mhm.
a body, a human body, that basically try to resolve the problems and the day-to-day functionings of bodily processes, right?
Mhm.
But interestingly enough, the people who make Cells at Work have decided to release Cells at Work Code Black, which is the same concept: anthropomorphic cells trying to do their job, but in
Mhm.
a much more darker tone, and kind of like a grittier concept, I guess.
Mhm.
um, uh, Basically the body that they inhabit is not well taken care of, smokes and drinks and doesn't sleep and doesn't eat properly. So every kind of like bodily function that needs to be carried out by these cells are much more dire, they're much more
Mhm.
difficult to accomplish. That
Indeed.
sets up for a lot um, more interesting kind of set pieces as they try to resolve those things and basically just try to keep their human alive,
Mhm.
more or less. The fight scenes are like dramatically more action, a lot more gory in certain parts as well, which is
Yeah.
surprising. It feels a lot more shonen than what the original Cells at Work series is.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, you want to chime in a bit about what you've been enjoying, which one of the two you enjoy a bit more?
Sure. To differentiate cells at work, second season is cells at work with two exclamation marks. That's how you know what it is.
Yeah.
And cells at work Code Black, obviously the spin-off based on the manga. Cells at work, the original series, currently in its eighth episode of season two,
Mm-hmm.
remains a very cutesy, very edutainment approach to medical biology in
Yeah.
human beings. It kind of represents a more homeostatic side of things, where the body is generally healthy by default, but there are various crises and diseases and bacteria that happen from time to time. You do fall sick once in a while. Um, that is not the case with cells at work Code Black, where the body is in a state of perpetual disrepair. I would even say that cells at work Code Black is a dystopian show. Um,
Mm-hmm.
a dystopian workplace series, whereas Cells at Work is a utopian workplace series. In Cells at Work, you see that the cells are working hard. We still follow red blood cell and white blood cell, and they are gender swapped for the spin-off series. Lah. But
Yeah.
in the main show, it remains very good. Most recently, the cancer cell arc is probably the darkest Cells at Work main show has ever been.
Yeah.
And it shows that it can do that as well while still retaining a kind of cutesy kiddie charm that is necessary to entertain I think kids 12 and below,
Mm-hmm.
and as
Mm-hmm.
well as educate them about the processes and functions of the body to take better care of themselves.
Yeah.
It's actually still a very very good show, and still very informational and medically accurate in
Yeah.
terms of everything that is presenting, everything from cancer to flus to gut bacteria, which is something like I'm personally like getting to know. I mean, for the longest time I've had like issues with my guts, but like I've revamped my diet to drink more Yakult and introduce more like good bacteria.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it anthropomorphized in its latest arc, the latest three episode arc. Where a white blood cell is trying to protect these good bacteria from other
Mm-hmm.
white blood cells who may not be able to differentiate. Interestingly enough, the latest episode about the cancer cells
Mm-hmm.
is very good because they require the killer T cells to come in, take care of the cancer cells. But there is a function of the T cells, one part of them called the regulatory T cells,
Yeah.
which do not allow white blood cells to attack its own body, and thus is protecting the cancer cells. A very good way to teach kids or young adults that sometimes the body can turn on itself if it
Yeah.
doesn't know any better. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the flip side, like, with Code Black, it is extremely adult, extremely violent, extremely gory take on cells at work.
Yeah.
Primarily because the body here is probably the body of an adult who doesn't take care of himself. As you
Yeah.
mentioned, smoke drinks, suffers from kidney stones, erectile dysfunction, liver failure, like organ failure. Every part of the body is fucked up. Um, and consequently you see that the characters themselves at work, Code Black, may have begun as happy-go-lucky, as hardworking as their counterparts in cells at work body, but the
Yeah.
Code Black body has made them into gruff, violent, uh curmudgeons.
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they are angry, they're overly stressed, much like the body is.
Yeah.
They are overworked to the extreme. Each episode is just, you see them fighting against exhaustion. They are working non-stop to keep this body running, to with no help from the body's from the body himself, like the person.
Yeah.
Nothing has inspired me to lead a healthier lifestyle than sex at work Code Black, which is, I guess, the point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Code Black really inspired me to maybe cut down on smoking, cut down on drinking, sleep more,
Yeah.
be not as stressed, because these poor cells in my body are having a hard time
Oh yeah, man.
trying to cope myself. One particular episode, I mean, it's not the best episode, but probably the most famous of Code Black,
Yeah.
deals with erectile dysfunction. Just by the
Yeah.
nature of it, it made a lot of headlines, lah.
Yeah.
So just the idea of these like millions of cells in your body, the red blood cells, trying their best to give this poor guy an erection, and then subsequently realizing that the guy was just like probably just jerking off and it's not for procreation.
Yeah.
It feels so sad, lah. It feels so sad. It feels so. I mean, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong, and
Yeah.
the music, but at the end of the day, it's a very sad episode, lah.
Yeah.
One is fluffy and friendly and pleasant. The other is gruff and violent and gory. It is the difference between reading or between X-Men and X-Force. It's this kind of
Mm, that's a
the
that's a good
differentiation.
comparison.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And like so Code Black, the other stuff too. There not as many white blood cells, not as many red blood cells. Obviously
yeah,
because the body just can't produce as much. So yeah, it's tough to watch Souls at Work. It's always tough.
yeah, yeah. Cold Black really caught me off guard. Like, I think the moment for me was in the first episode where they
Yeah.
show the paddlers who are so cute in the original one, and
Hmm.
they're just like these like completely like psycho eyed like little chibi characters.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, they're not messing around this time. Like they're completely putting the tone on its head.
Mm.
But yes, Cells at Work season 2 and Cells at Work Code Black, both equally good in their own way, both
Mm.
educational in different ways. I personally like really like what they did with Code Black.
Mm.
I think like it's a bit closer to like my situation with my body, and I'm learning quite a bit from that.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, as adults, we really don't take care as good of body as we should.
Mm.
So it has definitely been very educational in a very different way, but no
Yeah.
less educational for sure.
It's
Yeah.
a creative way to interpret the realities of the body in the form of this anthropomorphic factory town, shall we say?
Mm. Mm.
Very, very great. Both are very different. My first boss, my first editor at a website called insync.com.
Yeah.
Deborah Gem, shouts out if you're listening. Has a 2-year old, two, I think oh no, she's 4 by now. Okay, she's a
Mm.
4-year-old girl who loves Cells at Work.
Oh, that's amazing.
She shows her on Netflix. Like she
Yeah.
got Cells at Work from my recommendations from like my Potwire article. So she
Uh-huh.
messaged me on Twitter saying that like her daughter loves Cells at Work. Should she watch Cells at Work Code Black? To which I would definitely say no.
No, no,
If your
it's
kids
not.
are into Cells at Work, do not ever let them watch Code Black until they're
Yeah.
maybe like 16 lah, at
Yeah.
least lah.
Yeah. Minimum.
Yeah,
Minimum. Like that's way, way too early to be exposing
yeah.
them to that. Yeah.
Cells at Work Code Black is for us. Cells at
Yeah.
Work is kids. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing that a franchise can do both, right? Uh
Mm,
yeah. It's a very rare thing. Let's just put
indeed.
it that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next up, and the last of kind of like the big returning series this time around that I'm going to talk about is The Promised Neverland season 2, which we kind of teased a bit on in Hidze's review of that for Quick Hits, the live action movie.
Live action film. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was saying, like I've got a bit to talk about this, right? Like super hyped for to join Emma, Ray, and the rest of the gang. On their journey to kind of escape from this dystopian world that they're living in. However, um,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let me just go where the story is at. So Emma Ray and the rest of the older children have now escaped Gracefield House, right? But the demons are relentless and set on capturing them, and they are continuing to try and keep their freedom, the hard-won freedom that they've already on, right?
Right.
Now they're in the wilderness. The children can try to remain optimistic, right? Because they have um the possession of books, which kind of like ease their way into like the survival, and keeps their hopes up. um, and coded within these books, which you will find out as the series progresses, are messages like detailing the outside world and how to get there. And so that has just basically been what the kids have been doing as they're trying to survive this nightmare that they find themselves born into.
Mm.
Um, where the series is at now, right? I think it's about episode 4, episode 5.
Right.
um I just like it felt like there was a sudden shift in terms of where the story was going, right? Like the
Oh,
pacing
okay.
kind of changed, and like suddenly, all of a sudden, right? Like they get reunited with Norman
Mm.
off
Mm-hmm.
screen,
Oh, wow.
out of nowhere. And I'm just like, are you serious? Like it's so out of character for the
Mm.
people that are doing Promise Neverland to do that. And I was curious, like what was going on. So lo and behold, as always, if you want to know if something is amiss, just go to my anime list and look at the comment section. I don't
Yeah.
recommend that on a daily basis, but once in a while, if you feel something's wrong, that's where you
Mm-hmm.
should go. And it turns out, because I haven't been reading the manga, right, that there is an entire missing arc called the Goldie Pond arc, right?
Oh wow.
And this arc comes shortly after Emma and the family escape from the orphanage. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like dark storytelling. There's a lot of like details in that and new characters that appear in there that set up for their reunion with Norman later
Oh,
on, and they completely skipped all of it. Like it's a fairly long arc.
what's the reason for
Um, I don't know, right? Like the studio has not responded um to anything there. The strange thing is that the studio did say that season 2 would contain some original material
this? Mm.
with approve from the mangaka, uh but we haven't seen any of that, right? And I really really don't hope like the shortcut 1.5 episodes where they try to merge, like skip an arc and merge the thing together,
Yeah.
is considered what they consider kind of original things. So like first half really good. The world building continues to be kind of amazing. The voice acting by the kids are continue to be amazing, and then all of a sudden like it changes, and like it's hard to watch now, right? I personally have decided to go and read the Goldie Pond arc. I'm not done with it yet, and I'm not gonna give any spoilers for that, but I
Okay.
completely understand why a lot of fans are not happy with the
Mm.
way that it's turned out, because it really does seem very pivotal to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why they decided. I mean, it's not filler. It's like a side quest more or less, right? But it is still
Right.
extremely important for many of the characters to kind of flesh out their growth.
Uh-huh.
Um, and as well as skipping out some of the world building points, which they only kind of barely cover in the anime itself. So Promise Neverland season 2, half good. I'm
Half
not
good.
really sure after this discovery and starting to catch up on the manga as well, whether or
Oh.
not it's going to resolve itself well. Like really,
Mm.
like just honestly, like meeting up with Norman was like a big part of how this was supposed to play out, right? And then for
Yep.
it to be yeah, for it to be like out of nowhere like that is just kind of like disappointing, because prior
Yeah.
to that it was really good.
I
Yeah,
I
but
I I I can see the angle. Yeah.
yeah. So like for fans who've been looking forward to this, it's still good. Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't know. I feel like they kind of made a mistake, right? Like I'm usually far from being the one who likes to kind of like hop on the fandom bandwagon to complain about things. But
Mm-hmm.
in this case, I do feel like it's reasonable for them to hold that opinion. I do think that Promised Neverland as anime is still going to be very good going into the future. There's still tons of story for them to adapt from.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not really sure if it was the right decision this time around.
Mm.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. So that wow, that's a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's it for returning series. I'm gonna talk very quickly about two returning anime
Mm.
that I really really enjoyed. Um, I really, really enjoyed quite a number of years ago. The first one I'm going to talk about is World Trigger, right?
Okay.
And the premise of the story is that a gate to another world opens suddenly on Earth, and Mikado City is invaded by these strange creatures known only as neighbors, right? They come in all shapes and sizes, and they're these beings, alien beings, who are impervious to kind of traditional weaponry. An organization is set up called the Border Defense Agency to combat the problem of the neighbors through these special weapons called triggers, which are powered by this new resource that is discovered called Trion, right?
Okay.
And that's kind of like the setting for the story. It's a very, very small kind of peek into the world building that they're doing. Um, we follow Osamu Mikomu, who is just a regular kind of like nerdy kid who gets caught up with a deactivated neighbor, right? And a strange boy who he's never seen before in his small
Okay.
neighborhood comes to save him. That sparks off a friendship that eventually sees them joining Border as
Mm.
trainees and in and wow, there's actually a lot of stuff to spoil. Okay,
Wow.
yeah, so they join Borders as trainees, trainee agents, and basically the The two seasons that we are going to get, or rather the second season that we are now, basically um, journals their journey towards resolving some of the
Some, yeah.
some of the mysteries that surround like the neighbors and why the world is the way it is right now, right?
Right.
So World Trigger came out in 2014. It ran for 70 episodes, 73 episodes, right?
Hmm.
So it's been uh, 2016. It's been 6 years, and we finally got a season two. It picks up directly where the old season left off.
Hmm.
Um, the world building continues to be amazing, but the animation and the soundtrack have improved tremendously. I think
Hmm.
with how much technology has improved for animators since that time, it continues to be like this really really solid thing. The problem is that because there's so much that I haven't talked about World Trigger before. Like 73 episodes is a lot of stuff to kind of like cover without spoiling. There's a
Ton,
fair
yeah.
amount of there's a lot of arcs with a lot of like cliffhangers and twists and turns and reveals that deepen the lore of the story itself that I can't get into
Mm.
without spoiling stuff, and which also results in me not being able to talk about the second season almost in its entirety because of that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's a bit of a problem. But very honestly, World Trigger was one of my favorite when it came out in 2014. I followed it religiously until the end of 73 episodes. Super happy that it just came back. It was a surprise to me actually. Like it kind of came out of the blue. I'm very happy to say that the six or so episodes that we're in right now, like I went back to go and rewatch some of the later episodes just so I could refresh my memory because it's been such a long time.
Mm.
Um and it's better. It really really is. Like the animation is smoother, the fight scenes feel more dynamic, the colors seem a bit more vibrant. I think they changed up the palette a bit. The voice
Mm.
acting seems clearer and all of that, and I don't know if it's just because like streaming nowadays is like so much better, or just technology kind of catching up. I
Yeah.
do like the fact that they didn't do a time skip and all of that, because very honestly, when it ended, like it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, which was disappointing to a lot of fans.
Yep.
So now that they're coming back in and they're resolving a lot of these questions that have hung over fans for 6 years, like yeah, it's getting exciting again. So World Trigger has a very very interesting sci-fi world building, the concepts that they kind of explore, and the huge ensemble cast is really really good. Like honestly, like how detailed they go into the side characters and their backstories and their motivations and all of that is comparable to like Assassination Classroom, which is high praise, um
Mm.
so like uh all them have these like very unique kind of like complex powers, and it's not just about how strong you are or how quick you are or how clever you are. Like there's a combination of a lot of these factors like add up together. The technology that they kind of like have created in this was interesting. So I highly recommend World Trigger. I'm sorry that I can't elucidate a bit more about what it's about, but it's very hard to do so without spoiling like many, many, many episodes worth of material. So,
Yeah.
safe to say that I'm very happy that World Trigger is back. I've been enjoying the new season as an old fan, and if you are looking for something, sci-fi slash shonen stuff, um, with strong themes about like friendship and teamwork,
Hmm.
I would really suggest you start on this because you can binge 73 episodes even before you get into the new season, which I
Oh,
think some
cool.
people are looking forward to.
Okay.
Yeah. The other returning old anime that I would like to talk about is Log Horizon Season 3. Now,
Yep.
Log Horizon is one of those. Okay, Log Horizon came out around the time as Sword Art Online, and it suffered from the problem that it was a very similar concept about people getting trapped in a game, right?
Hmm.
Um, they took a very very different route from SAO. Um, and like okay, I'll just read the synopsis, right, to give you an idea. Like in the blink of an eye, 30,000 bewildered Japanese gamers are whisked away from their everyday lives into the world of popular MMORPG Elder Tale. After their
Mm.
game's latest update and unable to log out Among them is our protagonist, a socially awkward college student called Shiro, whose confusion and shock last only for a second as a veteran of the game, the party he is attacked and he realizes that in order to survive, he's got to get his shit together.
Yeah.
Um, Shiro navigates this new world in a very different way from what they do in SAO, because he realizes that this game, being the real world for him now, requires you to do more than just fight. You must find a way to feed yourself and your people around you and build up a society so that you don't all get wiped out by the monsters that are invading.
Mm.
Log Horizon has been one of my favorite of this particular genre. Not to say that SAO is bad, it's
Okay.
just very, very different because of its decision to focus on other parts than combat, right? Much in the same way that Spice and Wolf looked a lot of trading and economics, or
Mm,
like
yeah.
Mao Hero looks a lot at politics and economics. There is a lot of that within Log Horizon, right? Like you talk about, what makes a party good, what is the interpersonal relationships there, what happens behind the scenes in trying to build a guild, what do you need, what does it take to run a city, um that's made up of both adventurers who are these completely like overpowered godlike beings, of which you are one of, and these NPC like characters, called the people of the land, who for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes in this new world are just normal everyday human beings, right?
Okay.
And so there's some tension in that as well. In fact, in the first season, like a big part of the conflict and resolution has to do with the tension between adventurers and the people of the land, and that continues to play out over kind of two seasons. And interspersed between all these, you have this adventures into these dungeons and these raids with all these quests, that still function very much like the game itself, but the consequence of failing in this world is not like a respawn timer. Well, there is a respawn timer, but like there's more cost to it than what the original game allowed them to. So
Right. Okay.
yeah, Log Horizon Season 3 is called the Destruction of the Round Table, which is something that was created in Season 2. It is far more about politics here than any sort of like action and combat, which we got a fair bit of in Season 1 and Season 2. The first
Mm.
4 episodes are fairly difficult to get into if you haven't watched the last two seasons.
Okay.
But it picks up. It really, really does pick up. And I have to say that like I'm so glad it's been 7 years since season 2 has been out.
Ooh.
They're picking up where they left off with no lack attention to detail than they did before. And kind of like to be able to hit the ground running like that, like they don't feel the need to like re-immerse you in the world, right? You want to watch, go watch the first 2 seasons, come back and see what we're doing here, right? It's
Mm.
it's pretty bold, and I do feel like, I mean, some fans are a bit turned off by that, right? Because it is gotten fairly serious and fairly complex in terms of the political side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just the inclusion of like the greater Yamato region, which is the world that they're living in right now, instead of just focusing on Shiro and his companions, which was kind of the easier breezier part of it. Yeah, so highly
Mm.
recommend Long Horizon Season 3. Please go ahead and binge. I think it's like 36 episodes for Season 1 and 2,
Oh, okay.
combined. There was one
Uh,
24 episode season and one 12 episode season, and
Mm.
then you can kind of like dive into Log Horizon Season 2. This is one of my favorite animes of this particular genre,
Nice.
and really excited to share it with people. Finally, like proper formal introduction. Again,
Awesome.
I can't reveal too much without spoiling stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I promise you it's worth your time. Okay,
Nice. Okay.
I'm gonna kind of breeze through um the new anime recommendations that I have, and the top one that I have right now, I'll go in order of things that I find really good. It's called
Oh,
Wonder
cool.
Egg Priority.
Okay.
If the name sounds very familiar, I don't know if it has any kind of resemblance. There is a distinctly Haruki Murakami hard-boiled Wonderland tone to this anime
Okay.
for some reason, right? As far as I know, it's of no relation, but interestingly
Uh-huh.
enough, right?
Mm.
So basically, following the suicide of her best and only friend, Koito Nagase, Ai Oto, who's our protagonist, is left grappling with a new reality. She feels like there's nothing left to live for, and she bumps into a mysterious entity and gets roped into purchasing an egg, or which turns out to be a wonder egg, hence the name
Mm.
of the series. Upon breaking the egg, in a world that materializes while she sleeps, Ai is tasked with saving people from different difficulties and adversities that come their way. And in doing so, she starts to believe that she's moved one step closer to saving her best friend.
Oh, okay.
It is a dangerous and tempting opportunity, and Ai enters a place where she must recognize the relationship between her own demons, other people's demons, and her own demons, right?
Mm.
As past trauma and unforgettable regrets and innate fears hatch in this bizarre world of Wonder Egg Priority, I discovers the different inner struggles tormenting humankind and rescues them from their worst fears.
Ooh, okay.
This is an art house of an anime
Mm.
series. It is gorgeous. The voice
Mm-hmm.
acting is great. The animation is beautiful. The music is on point. Uh,
Nice.
it is as close to magical realism as we're gonna get um,
Mm.
for the slice of life scenes, and then when we dive into the fantasy world, like it's a trip. It's a total trip. I really really love the artwork. Um, this is by Cloverworks, by the way, who are on a rampage this season because they're also the people that are doing Promise Neverland. They're also the
Yeah.
people who are doing the next one that I'll be talking about as well. So like kudos to Horrorworks. Like Wonder Egg Priority caught me completely off guard when I first read the synopsis, the a shorter synopsis before the season began. I was like, I'm not really sure if I want to catch this. I got hooked
Mm-hmm.
like 3 episodes in.
Oh, wow.
I think that as it stands right now, this it has the potential to be A tier, like by the time it's done, right? If not S tier.
Mm.
So like
Okay.
highly recommend Wonder Egg Priority if you are a fan of like your Kimi no Nawa. I mean your name, or like Alice Evergarden
Mm.
standard of animation. Like this is definitely for you. Amazing stuff.
Mm.
Yeah,
Got shades
every
of like a silent voice a bit also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
the art style is very similar to A Silent Voice.
Okay.
The music reminds me of a lot of the soundtracks from A Silent Voice. Very, very good stuff.
Cool.
Completely caught me off guard. Like it didn't really feel like much. Like the poster didn't really show me anything. The synopsis was kind of like, it's not something that hasn't been done before, right? But
Mm.
damn, like it's really really good. I'm like, honestly, I want to see where this goes. Like it could reach like Bakemono Tagari levels.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, we'll see. Like obviously, like we've gotten a lot of great shonen stuff, Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia. We haven't really seen this sort of like more indie kind of art house vibes anime in
Mm-hmm.
quite some time. So
Mm-hmm.
this has got me like super excited to see how it does.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. For people who are more into slice of life and rom coms, also by Cloverworks, I would like to recommend Horimiya, which is very simple. It's one of those rom com that manages to do what I think a lot of anime rom coms can't. It has the atmosphere of a rom com, but it very easily keeps you engaged with the drama and makes you very very quick to be invested in the characters and their relationship. Basically, we follow two characters, Kyoko Hori and Izumi Miyamura, uh, are two students who are hiding secret parts of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The very social Kyoko actually has very little life because she's busy with housework and taking care of her little kids. The
Mm-hmm.
extremely reserved Izumi is taken for like a bookish kind of nerd, but he actually has been hiding his tattoos and his piercings from his friends just because he has social anxiety
Oh.
due to some things that happen. As always, right? They have kind of like a meet cute that results in them starting to spend a lot more time with each other, and they grow to learn about each other's secret selves
Right.
that has greater implications for not just their relationship with each other, but also their greater friend group within the school and the class itself. Um, they're completely opposite from one another, but they make fast friends, and slowly they learn that they have to learn to come and they help each other to come to learn how to accept themselves, and the differences in each other. It's a very heartwarming, very well written, touching story that doesn't mince the difficulties of kind of like growing up and living double lives because of the expectations of society around you.
Mm.
Solid stuff. I mean, not in the same league as Wonder Egg Priority, I think, but like as far as rom com stuff goes, slice of life stuff this season, my top recommendation for that genre
Hey,
for
great.
sure.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna dip into three kind of like honorable mentions, kind of my guilty pleasure watches. For
Okay.
fans of the isekai genre, the two I'm going to talk about is Jobless Reincarnation, or Mushoku Tensei. Yeah, basically 34-year-old NEET who's been wasting like the majority of his life away after suffering from intense trauma from being bullied in high school.
Oh,
Gets hit by a truck kun, ported to
okay.
another world, where he retains all of his old memories, even as a child. Discovers that this world has magic, and because of that, that he's innately gifted, as all isekai protagonists are. Well, most of them
Ah,
at least.
okay.
What's interesting about this is that his new life and his attempt to redo his life this time around helps him to overcome a lot of the trauma that he has experienced before, right? Like his agoraphobia, his inability to leave the house, his
Mm.
inability to socialize with members of the opposite sex, his inability to believe in his innate capabilities and all of that. All of
Mm-hmm.
that gets like slowly kind of resolved with the small interactions that he has with his family and the people around him. And as his ability to wield magic grows, so does his ambition to be better in this world than he was before. That aspect of it is touching, but it is a hilariously funny look because he's a 34-year-old, you know, hikikomori who is been put into a world with like elf girls and beast girls and all of that. So it's got
Mm.
plenty of the fan service that you expect from that. Everyone is kind of taken aback at this like 8-year-old child's extremely witty and sarcastic kind of retorts. Very very funny. And overall, like it's just an easy kind of watch for people who are looking for some isekai stuff to do.
Sweet.
In the same vein, for isekai stuff, is So I'm a Spider, So What? I
Mm-hmm.
actually discovered this some time ago because I was reading the manga, and I didn't really get anywhere far with it, just because the manga was fairly wordy. But if you enjoy the time I got reincarnated as a slime, right, you're gonna really enjoy this. Essentially, it's the exact same concept, but instead of being a slime, our protagonist is a spider.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's quite funny. Yeah, so the usual thing, high school class gets like destroyed catastrophically, and all of them get transported into another world where there's magic and monsters and all of that jazz. The quietest girl in the class is not so lucky because she doesn't reincarnate as a noble or a high priestess or anything of the sort.
mm-hmm.
She reincarnates as the weakest form of spider in a dungeon.
Wow.
And it's non-stop like hardship and suffering from there, and she slowly has to use her wits to navigate this strange world where there's like an RPG level up system, and she has absolutely no idea how she's going to go on. She eventually accepts the fact that this is her life right now and that she's a spider, and she kind of rolls with it, and that's where it gets
Okay.
like really comedically like hilarious. If
Oof.
you enjoyed Slime, this is a very kind of different take on a similar premise. A lot more about you. It focuses a lot more about her journey and her growth, instead of like the typical training montage that we get a lot of times.
Right.
Yeah, this is a kind of a guilty pleasure because it's so silly. all the spider related powers are just ridiculous. And then like kind of as a subplot to this is what her classmates are doing in this new fantasy world. Like they're all
Mm-hmm.
like superpowered and like well placed in society and all that jazz, as would most isekai protagonists. So she's on the
Yeah.
losing end of things. That
Oh.
part is interesting, and it sets up the
Mm-hmm.
context for the story later on, as far as I can
Mm-hmm.
tell from the manga. But that's not the part that's enjoyable. The enjoyable part is just like her coming up against like all these monsters that are way more powerful than her, and she somehow or another like pulls off like victories from that. And like
Nice.
they have these like really really long monologues where she basically has to go through the process of deciding what to power up instead of the other thing, and like it all has like hilarious outcomes to it, regardless of what she chooses, and that for me is enjoyable because I mean, if you're any sort of serious gamer, I think that's something that you've gone through before, right? Okay,
Yeah.
last two. Oh my god, that's a very long episode. Okay, bottom tier
Yeah.
character Tomozaki.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Fumiya Tomozaki is Japan's best player at a fighting game called TechFam.
Mm-hmm.
He holds a revered title, but he is completely no social skills, and cause him to kind of fall short in his everyday life in school. He doesn't have any friends, and he basically sees real life as a shit game, essentially, right? So the game that
Right.
he's great at, and justifiably so, is a god tier game. But he decides that life is a shit game because the rules constantly change, and that characters like him have no chance. So he's a bottom tier character. There's no chance of
Mm.
him becoming the best, right? Has a fateful meeting with the second place tech fan player, right? Who's been catching up to him over the years, and he's shocked to find out that it is actually one of the most popular girls in his class slash his school,
Oh.
who challenges him and says like, "Look, if you can do well in tech fam, I'm here to challenge you and tell you that life is a god tier game, and I'm going to show you how." So that starts
Okay.
their relationship, whereby she breaks down how he can start to game his life,
Mm-hmm.
and his social relationships with other people, to overcome the social awkwardness that he has. It's incredibly funny. Like it's not as deep as it necessarily sounds,
Right.
but it's fun to kind of watch someone overcome um, their social anxiety and their ability to relate with other people through a form of gamification, which was something that I did for 5 years as a job. To
Yeah.
see that and applied in an anime concept like this has been incredibly fun.
Nice.
It's
Okay.
nothing very deep again, but like I've been enjoying this a lot, just to see the way that they approach it, and like you feel a sense of like, there's a thrill every time he overcomes a quest that he's been given by this girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he starts to the realization dawns on him that there are some universal principles of success that can be applied in any situation,
Yeah.
and gamification is one way to do that. So just kind of like a very personal experience for me to see that come to life.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay, the last one, extremely silly. One of my favorite this season actually. It's called Heaven's Design Team. Concept is very
Mm.
simple. What if God decided to outsource the design of all the animals in the animal kingdom to a
Mm-hmm.
design agency? That's the whole
Okay.
concept, right? It's this very strange kind of supernatural thing where angels come down to give the client brief, the client being God, to
Yep.
these extremely talented artists who have to fulfill the most insane, inane requests from God, to create these animals, with all these extremely vague kind of like approval processes. It really, really
Uh-huh.
functions like a workplace comedy. If you
Yeah.
work in an ad agency or a design agency, like this really hits close to home,
Yeah.
and it's extremely fun. And in addition to that, it's quite educational as well. Like how they get to designing the animals is totally nonsense, right? But they have these portions where they do say, they do break down, like this is how a platypus is. It's not exactly how they designed it, but these are the features of a platypus and what makes it unique. So there are
Uh-huh.
little segues to that, which I think are extremely educational as well. found out a lot of things about exotic animals that I don't know, or even just like animals in general, actually.
Mm.
Uh, but it's really, really funny, easy breezy kind of watch, and yeah, like interesting workplace comedy with an interesting premise.
I got a question for the design. I'm assuming that this takes place before the Earth, right?
Okay, so they don't actually address that at
Ah,
any kind
because
of.
like they are humans, but humans come after some. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't
I don't
know
know
if
what the
they're
world
human.
is like.
Okay, there are two established angels, which are like kind of like they're the suits, right? There are two suits. They are
Yeah.
angels. There's God, who
Yeah.
is the client essentially.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
don't
Yep.
actually know if the designers are human. You know that they are
Oh.
not. You know that they are not angels, right?
Mm.
You assume they are human, but as you have rightly surmised, if you assume they are human, and we go with your typical kind of like Abrahamic Genesis story,
Yeah.
then it becomes a problem, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to take that part with a kind of a pinch of salt. But at no point in time do they actually state that they're human. The
Interesting.
characters are really quite something. They
Mm-hmm.
all have their like different strengths. There's like a senior designer who's one kind of like prize um a prize design was the horse. Like he won a lot of accolades for that.
Hmm.
And he just try keeps trying to make variations of the horse. There's a ton of
Hmm.
running jokes about that. That's in like every episode. There's one girl who's like your typical like the creepier it is, the cuter it is.
Yeah.
And like it also deals with all these like why is it that these mythical creatures were designed for but were never approved as well, and all those are incredibly
Mm.
funny. Yeah. uh
Interesting. Okay. So they may not be humans. Perhaps in like a season finale, they're so exhausted that they design humans after themselves. Could be an idea. Sounds like a good show, particularly if you've dealt with clients who all think that they're God.
oh my god, like yeah, seriously, like the client
Uh,
briefs, right, are pretty fucking ridiculous, and it's like, oh, I've had something like that before. Yeah,
hmm.
and like they're just
All
constantly
all
stressing.
clients think that they're God. So yeah, this is a perfect show for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, it hasn't gotten like great ratings or anything on any of the anime review sites, but I've really
Hmm.
been enjoying it because it's so silly.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
Awesome.
that's all I have for my anime corner. As Hidze warned you before, that was a pretty stacked one. But just because
Yeah.
like a ton of stuff is coming out after being delayed for a while with all the
Hmm.
COVID situations,
Hmm.
it is as far as I can remember, this is probably the most stacked winter season that we've seen in a long, 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 long time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I
It it's good. It makes up for the Finn anime corner that we gave you a few months ago.
yeah, yeah. The fall season was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a ton of stuff. Again, we'll be listing the names and stuff if you guys want as
Interesting.
well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you guys can go check that out. Again, all of these can be found. Well, some can be found on Netflix, especially the more popular ones. Again, you can find it on Funimation, or Crunchyroll, or your anime streaming service of choice.
Definitely, yeah. And we will be back this in the next few weeks with two more episodes of Behold, and
Yep.
of course, the next episode of Genre Equality 40. Okay, so the next episode of Behold will be delving into documentary comedies.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about Nathan for You, How to with John Wilson, and Magic for Humans,
Hmm.
just to show you that Sacha Baron Cohen does not have a monopoly on a genre. I know he has popularized the genre, but there are other creators out there that are kind of taking it in different, weirder, more esoteric directions that are
Yep.
not so in your face. Lah.
For sure.
Then we'll be talking about movies that focus on characters that blur fiction and reality for art.
Hmm.
This has happened before, and a surprisingly common genre. Apparently, only creators like to talk about creative problems.
Yeah.
The titles we are discussing are Adaptation, Madeline's Madeline, Birdman, and Perfect Blue. And
Hmm.
next month's genre, big one. We got Godzilla versus Kong,
Yep.
the rematch of the century. They haven't fought in 70 years since the 1940s movie. Excited to see this rematch. I believe Kong won the first one. Can
Yeah.
Godzilla avenge his loss? We shall see. Zack Snyder's Justice League, all 4 hours of it debuting on HBO Max.
Yeah.
Raya and the Last Dragon coming out in a few days' time, actually, on
Yep.
both theaters and Disney Plus, which is now available in Singapore. Plus, we have the new seasons of Solar Opposites.
Hmm.
Chaos Walking. After 4 years of delays, Tom Holland's much like delayed movie Chaos Walking is finally coming out. We got other stuff, Boss Level, Resident Alien, Pacific Rim, The Black, the spin-off of Pacific Rim. It's an anime on Netflix also coming out.
Yep.
Speaking of enemies on Netflix, Dota, Dragon's Blood also comes out in March. I'll be talking
Mm.
about that. Plus The Irregulars, which looks like a really terrible take on Sherlock Holmes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that will be for next month's genre equality lah. Anything else you'd like to add before we cap it off?
No, no. I'm glad like things are kind of ramping back up again.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've had some pretty lean months in the last year or so. So it's good to see things getting moving again.
indeed. Zack Snyder's Justice League and Godzilla vs Kong obviously going to be our two main topics
Yeah.
next month. Uh, Highly doubt any of them are going to be like Oscar masterpieces, but seems like they will be fun.
Well, and
Godzilla,
yeah,
yeah, Godzilla vs Kong looks like it's fun. Yeah.
yeah. Kaiju stuff was always fun, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
don't have to take it too seriously. Unlike DC, we'll
Mm.
see. I don't know how I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do 4 hours and 21 minutes in any sort of reasonable sitting.
Nah, think of it as a show lah.
Yeah, maybe. I have a feeling I might drop out somewhere, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Give them the benefit of the doubt.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, side note, I actually had recently had a dream about Godzilla versus Kong. If you
Really?
do not if you don't follow MMA, two of the most famous MMA analysts out there on ESPN, Errol Helwani and Luke Thomas on CBS, they frequently break down MMA bouts, talking about the strengths and weaknesses, the technical deficiencies, and the technical strengths of each opponent.
Yeah.
That's only there for MMA nerds, which I am. I watch it religiously. It's basically what I watch to go to sleep.
Yeah.
It's a bit of my ASMR. So it kind of weaved into the Godzilla vs Kong trailer where they were observing some of the strengths and weaknesses of each,
Uh-huh.
breaking it down MMA style. So they were showing
Shit.
this clip from the previous Godzilla movie, which I firmly remember. Godzilla was taking on who's the three-headed creature? Ghidorah, right?
Ghidorah, yeah.
Yeah, so Godzilla was just standing still. He threw out his fire blast, his atomic blast at Ghidorah. Ghidorah moved his three hits. Fire blast missed. Ghidorah's third hit, bent over to the side at an angle, cut an angle, hit a counter fire blast at Godzilla. So I mean, they were breaking down the lack of head movement of Godzilla, which is worrying.
Yeah.
And Godzilla's, obviously opposable thumbs are a big issue and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like it made me want to really just like do an ESPN style breakdown of the strengths and weaknesses because it sounds like fun.
Oh, dude, that would be insane. Like, there is a lot of stuff that you could possibly do with that, right? Like
Hmm.
kaiju fights,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, anime fights, and all of that. That would
I
be
mean,
really, that would be an interesting series for sure.
if you saw the trailer, which I'm sure you all have, it's one of the most watched trailers of all time.
Yep.
Got King Kong's wild punch to Godzilla. The lack of head movement is there. It's a big issue
Mhm.
for Godzilla, and I wonder how he's gonna, counteract it. And he looks a bit fat. It looks like his training camp isn't going well. Stuff
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. This new Godzilla is a little, thick,
He's
all
a little
around.
chunky. Yeah, I remember like there's this whole controversy about people body shaming him.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. It was a
Yeah.
big problem.
Mm.
Yeah. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. We'll see how that goes. I mean, obviously a classic reborn.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. My bets are on Godzilla this time around, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Interestingly, if you watch the Japanese trailer, you can see Godzilla kicking ass, and if you watch the American trailer, Kong is kicking ass. Because obviously Kong, honorary New Yorker. I know he's from Skull Island, but he's pretty
Yeah.
much been accepted as New Yorker. Godzilla is Japan.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
in the Japanese trailer, Godzilla is kicking ass. Kong is getting beaten up. And on the flip side, Kong is kicking Godzilla's ass in the American trailer. So I see a little US versus Japan thing going on.
Well, I mean, like, why not milk that, right? Like, might as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're psyched for that. Actually surprisingly psyched for Godzilla vs. Kong. I know it's not going to be like, great or anything, but it
It's
looks like a fun time. Lah.
fine. I
Yeah,
mean, like,
yeah.
honestly, this monster universe that they've been trying to create for a while now, it is
Hmm.
potential. I mean, like, it's not going to be anything deep or great or like life changing.
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely, man.
Yeah.
Until next time, this has been Hitzer.
I'm myself.
Catch us on SGCR or on Genre Equality on Facebook or on Mixcloud. Bye bye, guys.